Ansa, good morning. How are you doing?
Hi, Vinod. Good morning. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. Great to have you here. I think for audience who don't know you, can you just briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast as well. My name is Ansa Saju. I am a sports dietitian and I've been working in the field for about 10 years now. I have my post-graduation in clinical nutrition and currently I have my own practice. Where we deal with both nutritional requirements for athletes as well as for those who are living with metabolic conditions or, let's say, lifestyle diseases. So that's a small brief about what I work with, and I'm also currently doing my PhD, which takes a lot of my time.
Excellent. Great. I think I'll probably jump right into what we decided to discuss today, right? And
Hmm.
that's more about
Yeah,
lipids and fats. So we
yeah.
will do a basic primer and probably a deep dive depending on how much time we have.
Hmm. Hmm.
Let's start with the basic questions, right? What exactly are lipids and how are they different from fats?
Okay. So lipids, all kinds of fats are actually lipids. Lipids are basically things that are insoluble in water, and they are part of a lot of structural integrity and things like that. So your fats are things like your triglycerides, okay, which is something that gives energy to the body, okay. But I think to the conversation right now, I think lipids also means your serum lipid factors, like things like your total cholesterol, your LDL levels, your cholesterol, your VLDL, and things like that. Whereas fats, I believe, in this conversation would relate more to things like your invisible fats and visible fats, which are like the oil, the ghee, the butter that you're adding, right? So that would be the two types of classifications or two types of differences that I can tell you about what lipids and fats are.
Got it. Great. From a basic understanding, are these produced inside the body or are we taking it externally? How does it work? The lipids and the fats
Yeah.
when we speak about it.
Uh, so fats is something that we take from the diet also, but our body is also equally capable of creating these fats and the lipids. So your liver is something that can actually generate lipids from even things like your carbohydrates and your protein as well. Okay. And otherwise, whatever dietary fat you are consuming, your body can convert it into your lipids. Okay, your LDL and cholesterol and so on. So there is both. You consume it as well as your body produces it as well.
Okay, which basically then kind of points to the direction that it is a very essential function of the human body to have these fats and lipids. Is that what it? So if I basically I'm
Absolutely.
trying to ask you, why do we need these fats and lipids, for example? What does the body do with them?
Yeah. So fats actually is a very integral part of your cell membrane. Okay, to start with the very smallest unit, it's very integral for the cell structure. And going on outside of that, it is very important for creating these hormones, such as your sex hormones, like whether it is testosterone or even things like your cortisol hormones. So that, and then also what you see as vitamin D, that is also a kind of cholesterol. Okay, so it is required, fats are also required for the absorption of vitamins and minerals. Fats, apart from these absorption, it also creates a sense of palatability, sense of taste. Definitely, we know that when something has a little bit more richness to the food, we tend to like it, right?
Yeah.
So apart from the internal functions, fats also helps with making the cooking a lot easier, adding more flavor to the cooking. So in that sense, I would say fats are actually very important for our day-to-day life.
Got it. I think that makes it very clear. So it's essential for your daily living, production of several hormones for you to live
Yeah.
and then reproduce, right? So it becomes pretty
Yes.
essential. And what percentage of intake, is there any kind of a range to define what percentage of your daily intake in terms of calories
Mhm.
should be fats?
Yeah. When we divide the total calories, ideally somewhere between 20 to 35% of your total energy intake should come from fats. Okay. Now, in that itself, there is also another catch wherein in fats, we have different kinds of fats, like you have saturated fats, unsaturated fats, and trans fats. Okay. And these trans fats are something that we would like you to have in as less amount as possible because there is no good amount of trans fat. But the saturated fat is something where you can have in, let's say, less than 7% or less than 10% of your total caloric intake. But the overall fat should be between your 20 to 30% of your caloric intake.
Got it. Great. So I was in fact about to ask you about the types of dietary fats, the saturated, unsaturated, then I think poly, trans. It's a little confusing
Mm.
for the layman. So if I don't understand anything about this dietary fats, can you just explain them in very simple layman terms of what these fats mean? Why are they good or bad?
Yeah. So in simple terms, we know even for the serum lipids, we consider something as good fats and bad fats, right? Similarly, for the dietary fats also, what we have, your unsaturated fatty acids are something that is considered as good fats. Okay.
Okay.
So in the unsaturated fatty acids is where you have your polyunsaturated fatty acids and your monounsaturated fatty acids. Okay. In the polyunsaturated fatty acids, you have the omega-3 and the omega-6.
Okay.
Right? So in that itself, if you go into a little bit deeper, while the polyunsaturated fats are also essential, your omega-3 is what is much more heart healthy than your omega-6. Like omega-6, yes, it is very essential, but if you eat it in excess, that can also cause inflammation. Okay. And then you have the saturated fatty intake. So the saturated fats that come from the food, those are something that you have to have in moderation. So it is essential for the body, but it is not something that you can have in excess. Okay. If you have excess of saturated fatty acids, it can increase your LDL cholesterol. Okay. Which is considered as the bad cholesterol or the bad lipid. So that will increase chances of inflammation, chances of you having cardiovascular diseases. All right. And then you have the trans fats. So trans fats are something which is absolutely bad, or I would at least consider them bad. And those are things that ideally you should not consume in any amount, but it is something that creeps into our daily life when we have things like packet foods or when we, reuse oil. Okay, so when there is a lot of trans fats that is being added into the diet, that is something that can mess up with your total cholesterol levels and cause cardiovascular problems.
Okay. So there are three main categories, if I understand:
Yes,
saturated, unsaturated, and trans fat. Trans fat is a
yes.
strict no, very bad for you. Saturated is slightly less bad, if I understand,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
saturated is good to have. Is that right?
Unsaturated. Yeah,
Unsaturated is
unsaturated
good to
is good to
have,
have.
and unsaturated has mono and poly, correct? Is that right? Or
Unsaturated has, yeah, mono and poly. And in poly, you have the omega 3s and omega 6.
omega-6? And is there any distinction between this mono and then poly, or should we not worry too much about that?
Not so much. So monounsaturated fatty acids are also very essential. I would say the monounsaturated fatty acids, if you can keep it to a little higher, they are going to be beneficial. In the polyunsaturated fatty acids is where the catch is. You know, while we consider unsaturated fats as healthy, the polyunsaturated fats, the omega-6 is something that we should make sure that we are not taking it in too much
Too
excess
much.
because that again can cause inflammation. Yes.
Got it. Now, can you just give us some examples of foods that gives this
Mhm.
saturated, unsaturated, both mono and poly, omega-3 and
Mhm.
6, and then we go into transfer so that people can know what are the foods I should ideally be having, what are the foods I
Mhm.
should potentially be avoiding. Maybe you can talk
Yeah.
about that then.
Sure. So your oils like your coconut oil, palm oil, these are things that are more heavily in saturated fats and fats that you get from your animal sources like your ghee, butter, or the fats from milk, the fats from meat, meat and poultry. Those are also unsaturated fats. Those are actually higher in unsaturated fats. And then you have the sorry, those are higher in your
Saturate.
saturated fat.
Yeah.
So those are
Okay.
something that you have to kind of, keep quantity control sort of a thing. And then your monounsaturated fatty acids and polyunsaturated fatty acids are something that is richer in oils. Like, so your olive oil is something that has a lot of monounsaturated fatty acids. Your canola oil is something that has a lot of monounsaturated fatty acids. Whereas if we see the other vegetable oils like, rice bran oil or mustard oil, they have a combination of monounsaturated fatty acids and polyunsaturated fatty acids. Okay. Whereas when you take things like your sunflower oil or you take your, safflower oil, vegetable oils that way, they are more in polyunsaturated fatty acids. Okay. And now
Got
coming
it.
to the trans fats. Trans fats is something that is, I wouldn't say they are inherently present in food. They are basically, when the fat structure changes. So
Ah,
reheating of oil or reusing of oil is something that creates trans fats. Hydrogenation of oil is what creates the, trans fats. And earlier we used to use something known as margarine was something very common in Indian markets, right? The reason being, these are something that increases the shelf life and doesn't let the food go rancid very easily, like how if you have these unsaturated fatty acids. Okay, so in these options, what happens is when you are having but higher amounts of hydrogenated fatty acids, your trans fat content increases, and that
mm,
increases the problem. So even
okay.
your packet foods, if you see like a biscuit and if they say they have partially hydrogenated fat oils, then
Oh,
that is also something that's of concern because on a regular intake, that means you're having too much, right?
got it. So if I understand right, a saturated or unsaturated fat can turn into a trans fat. Is my understanding right or wrong?
A
Due to the structure
saturated
of.
fat, yes. So if you keep heating it, if you keep reusing the oil, trans fats will be formed. So that's why we say that, ideally you shouldn't reuse the oils for more than, 2 to 3 times. Ideally,
Got
they
it.
say not to reuse it at all, but if at all you have to reuse it, they ask you not, if you fry something with an oil, then don't use the same oil to fry something else because that high smoking point is what will create these trans fat
Yeah.
generation.
So this is for people who have the roadside samosa stalls. I think that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Even for that matter, when we go to these fast food chains and we get fries, and that
Uh,
is like constantly in the oil, being fried
oh,
in the oil, that is also something. Unless and until they keep, changing the oil frequently, it is a problem. Let's say, for example, even if you are making maybe urindu vada or something at
hmm,
home also, if
hmm.
we reuse the same oil the next day to make, let's say, maybe banana fritters or something else, you are inherently just creating more trans fats. So
Got it.
it could be something that happens at your home also. Or let's say a non-vegetarian. Today they make chicken fry with that, and tomorrow if they make fish fry with that, then they are increasing the trans fat content.
Got it. So one question then I have is there a, let's say you said the next day or reheating, right? Is there a time limit
Mhm.
at which we know that we should stop using this particular oil and replace it when we are frying it?
Yeah. So ideally, what I would recommend is when you have to fry something, try to use limited amount of oil so that there is very less for you to reuse. All right. So that's like the
Ah,
first step.
okay.
But in case if
Hmm.
there is any oil left after deep frying, what you can do is filter it with like a fine mesh and make sure you are storing it in a cold or dark place also. And then the second thing is use it for preparations that does not require very high amount of heat.
Heat.
Okay, so
Okay.
maybe just for a small tadka, or maybe you can use it just to make like a sabzi. So that is where you can use, but don't use the same oil for frying anything else.
Got it. Got it. I think this has been pretty useful. I think we've laid the foundation pretty neatly. Can you also you told primarily what kind of oil to we should be avoiding in general and the
Mhm.
saturated part. What are some great sources of this unsaturated fats that people should be taking on a daily basis?
So unsaturated fatty acids you also get from both, you get from plant sources. So even things like your nuts and oil seeds, your rice bran, they also have a good amount of unsaturated fats. And also fish, omega-3 is rich in your fish. So if you can have more amounts of fish, that is actually good because it will increase your omega-3 content. But otherwise, what you can do is include nuts and seeds frequently. Make sure if you can include whole grains, that also contains, unsaturated fatty acids. Then because rice bran oil is something that we create, make, and that's from a cereal, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that also has more amounts of unsaturated fatty acids and can be included in the
Mm.
diet.
Got it. Basically, it's a lot of good nuts that we should be having to get
Yes,
these
nuts,
unsaturated
oil seeds, fish. These are the main
good
sources for
sources.
unsaturated. Yeah.
So the I
If you
mean,
want food that is predominant in
yeah,
omega unsaturated fats, like if there are also other foods which will have unsaturated fatty acids in smaller amounts, but these are
got
the
it.
more prominent sources.
Yeah. So the reason I'm asking is you said almost 25 to 30% of our daily dietary intake should be through
Hmm.
these fats, and primarily about 80% of that should be from your unsaturated fat. So it's important then for people to be having these things to maintain the
Uh,
fat
yes,
requirement of
yes,
the body so that the necessary hormones
yes.
can be produced. So which then leads me to this question, answer. So a lot of times when people are looking to reduce weight, when they say reduce weight, they want to reduce fat,
Hmm.
and they actually think they should stop eating some fat, right? Because that's how people generally relate.
Hmm.
Is that a right
Yeah,
way to think?
yeah.
Is
I would say no, because in the sense that if you are having too little fats, one, you are going to mess up how the hormones are going to function. Okay. That in turn will also make it more difficult for you to gain weight or lose weight. Okay.
okay.
The other thing is your nutrient absorption also gets affected. Okay. Your body has thresholds for different nutrients. So it's not just as simple as, calorie in, calorie out. It is also your nutrient density of these different foods that is there. Okay. There is a reason why, even if we have a lot of cardiovascular diseases, we are saying that you need to have your fats between this particular range. So what we can do is, if you are trying to reduce your fats, okay, you can try to make sure that maybe you're going on the lower end of the recommended dosage so that it helps to stay within a particular calorie proportion. But another thing is, let's say in weight loss, what they might do is they might go for fat-free options or zero oil options. But in that, if you are increasing more carbohydrates, because fat is something that will give you satiety, then make you feel a little fuller, right? So when you are removing the fats, and if you're in turn adding more simple
Hmm.
carbohydrates, that's going to make you gain more weight only.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
And we even have a very famous popular diet that goes around is the ketogenic diet,
Yeah, yeah,
which
right.
has a higher fat intake but still gives you, weight reduction. Okay. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't recommend ketogenic diet without a dietitian supervision. But in that also, what we are doing is we are giving higher fat and you're still getting the weight reduction. Ultimately, yes, the total caloric intake matters, but reducing the fat too much or increasing the fat, a lot is not going to help you in a sustainable weight loss.
Got it. I think that kind of it's very interesting. I'm able to relate to that. So essentially, we also have been we know that the excess carbohydrates anyway gets converted into fat, isn't it? Or even protein. Whatever you eat gets converted into fat if it's not unused. Is that right?
Yeah, so your liver, like I started, I was telling you, like the liver, the body also generates fats, right? So, one blood parameter that can actually tell you if you about this is the triglyceride level. So, when you're checking your serum lipid profile, there is triglycerides, and triglycerides almost often are elevated if you have a lot of simple sugars. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so having a lot of excess of simple sugars can actually increase your fats in the body. So when people are actually reducing a lot of fats and still having a lot of carbohydrates, that's also going to increase the amount of fat being generated by the body because you're not giving anything to the body. So the body will generate because it requires it.
Okay. I think that kind of gives us a good segue to talk about the lipid profile then, right? The cholesterols
Mhm.
and the lipid profile that
Yeah,
people are more aware of. What exactly is a lipid profile and why should people know about it?
yeah. So lipid profile is something that helps you to understand how is your lipid metabolism or how your body absorbs and excretes and utilizes the lipids. Okay. So a couple of the main parameters in that, one is your LDL cholesterol, which is something everybody considered as the bad cholesterol. and for good reasons actually, because if you have a higher levels of LDL level, that in turn causes more risk for having cardiovascular diseases. Okay. Whereas you have the HDL cholesterol, which is something when you have in higher amount, is cardioprotective in nature. Okay. And then you have your triglycerides, which is something you find to be in elevated levels if you are having more of simple sugars and all. If it is within the normal ranges, that is okay. And then you have something known as your VLDL. VLDL is basically the amount of cholesterol that is being transported around in your blood or the lymphatic system. Okay. So these VLDLs, bloodstream. So what happens here is basically there is, these fats, once your body consumes it, digests it, it converts them as chylomicrons. Okay. These
Okay.
chylomicrons are what gets transported around, and that is what your VLDL levels will reflect and show you.
So, can you give us a little more details about VLDL and why should I bother about, like, what are the parameters they typically give you in a lipid profile? Is, I think, total cholesterol. Then they
Total
break down
cholesterol,
into
LDL cholesterol,
HDL, LDL,
mhm,
triglycerides, and then you mentioned about this VLDL.
VLDL,
I think these are the four
VLDL. Yeah.
parameters that they give, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah. They
what
also give you things like what is the ratio of HDL, LDL, and all
that's
that.
a division only,
Uh,
right? Yeah,
yes, yes, yes. So the total cholesterol definitely, like how it says, it is the overall cholesterol that is there in your bloodstream. Okay, that includes your HDL cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, and all. When there is an elevation in triglycerides or your LDL, there is an elevation in the total cholesterol as well.
right.
Whereas your LDL cholesterols and triglyceride levels, if they are in the normal, then your total cholesterol is also kind of in the normal. HDL cholesterol also has to be a little on the higher side. So usually we see that when somebody has higher amounts of LDL cholesterol, they also tend to have lower amounts of
Oh,
lower amounts of HDL cholesterol. Yeah,
inverse relationship.
exactly. Yeah. So for to put in terms with respect to the food, right? So when you have more amounts of unsaturated fatty acids, when you are more physically active,
Mm-hmm.
then your HDL cholesterol tends to increase.
Got it.
Okay. Whereas when you're having more amounts of saturated fats, so things like if you're having a lot of butter,
Mm.
ghee, a lot of full fats milk, lot of coconut oil, palm oil, these, if you are not active, is going to overspill, and those LDL levels are going to be elevated.
Got it.
Okay, so food has that impact on the blood levels where it increases it. So when somebody sees when we see somebody's blood reports, the lipid reports, we are able to identify what are the things that they are having in excess amount and they are having in lower amounts. Okay, so that is something when we see these blood reports, it gives us an idea about. And VLDL cholesterol is mostly with respect to the amount of cholesterol that is being transported in the body. It usually doesn't elevate so much in the blood levels unless and until your total cholesterols are also very high, because that is
Okay.
what is getting transported around. Okay, so whatever you eat, it is going to get transported around as VLDL.
So HDL, LDL, everything gets transported as VLDL. Is that right? Or
Yes, yes.
okay,
Everything basically gets transported around, not particularly VLDL, everything gets transported around as these chylomicrons. Okay.
okay,
And these, what happens is they have some protein molecule attached to it, they have some cholesterol molecules attached to it, and that's how these structures are. So it basically, these LDL, VLDL, HDL, and all, they vary with respect to what are the side chains. Okay,
mm-hmm.
or what are the things like, does it have more protein? So the HDL is actually high density lipoprotein. So that means it has more lipoprotein or more,
Okay,
lipid protein combination. And LDL is actually low density lipoprotein. Okay, so that means you have lower ratio of the protein to fat ratio. So, and similarly, VLDL is very low density lipoprotein.
got it, got it.
Okay, so that sort of varies.
Okay, so I have a question around the liver and the food intake, right? So You
Mm-hmm.
also, I think, mentioned a while ago that liver produces a lot of these lipids and fats, which
Mm-hmm.
I then understand that cholesterol is also produced by liver to some degree.
Yes. Yes.
So let's say I have a total cholesterol of some 200, just an example, right? There's a range
Mm-hmm.
and I have 200. What percentage of that is actually produced by the liver on a daily basis versus the food intake contribution to that? Is there anything that we need to know around that aspect?
Yeah, so I had actually tried to draw a diagram to, show, but unfortunately I couldn't finish. But what basically happens is when you consume some food, right? In the intestines, it gets broken down. Okay, like in the GI system, it gets broken down, and in from the intestine, it gets absorbed. It goes to the liver. Okay, from there is where all these lipids are created, whether it is your LDL cholesterols or your triglycerides, etc. Okay. So when you consume the food, it goes to the liver, and from the liver only all these products get increased. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes what happens is when there is excess amount of dietary fats or excess amount of dietary carbohydrates, the lipid production kind of increases in the body. Okay. That is when you have things like fatty liver. That is where you have higher levels of serum cholesterol. But your body is basically converting what it is getting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. While it is your body what is making this, it also strongly depends on what your body is getting.
Got it. So it's a combination of what you eat plus I mean, you're saying the production is directly linked to what you eat in some way.
Exactly, exactly. So, your when you're eating these dietary fats, right, they are broken down into fatty acids. Okay, that's like the smallest molecule that's there. And then your organs basically function in such a way to generate these lipid molecules or generate these, bigger fatty acids to help you with your metabolism and all the body functions.
Great. I think you've established the foundation pretty neatly. You mentioned that okay, food is a crucial factor in maintaining good lipid profile and fatty profile.
Hmm.
And you also touched upon exercise in between that if people eat
Hmm.
good amount of unsaturated fats plus exercise, their HDL seems to be higher and LDL seems to be lower.
Hmm.
How much of an impact does exercise or sleep, or what are the other factors that impact the cholesterol levels in the body?
Yeah. So couple of things that are very important with respect to the diet, your fiber intake is very important. So not
Mm-hmm.
just your fat intake, your fiber intake, because if there are these excess amount of fat or the cholesterols that's there, your fiber is going to, help to soak them up and then throw it away. So that's why when somebody has higher levels of LDL or higher levels of cholesterol, we ask them to have more fiber. Okay. So fiber intake is a very important factor. Now, your exercise activities. All right. So why exercise is important is because your for majority of the moving muscles that's there. So triglycerides are actually a good source of energy. Okay. So when you are being more active, what's going to happen is these triglycerides or the fatty acids are also going to be used up. Okay.
Ah,
So the more active you are, the body also uses these triglycerides or these fatty acids for energy purposes and help to maintain these levels within a particular range. Okay. But then
okay.
again,
Hmm.
it has to be like, let's say, um, it's not like you walk for 10 minutes and things are sorted. You have to be like, more cardio rich, more, for a slightly more intense than just like a 5-minute walk. And then you're like, okay.
So essentially, this will ensure that if at all there's an extra triglyceride in the stream, it gets used up because of the energy requirement while utilizing your muscles.
Yes.
And okay, that's
Yes.
quite interesting. That's where the source of energy comes from then for
Exactly.
moving the
So
muscles.
your body has two major sources. It also uses carbohydrates as a source of energy, and it uses fats also as a source of energy. Okay. So the problem with carbohydrates is the amount of carbohydrates in your body is very limited. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
While the amount of fats that is available in the body is actually quite large. Okay. So when to give you an example from athletes because they are the ones who are like very active, right? So when you take examples of endurance athletes, those are people who maybe their event lasts for maybe more than 1 hour or 2 hours. So your marathon runners, your triathlon athletes, or your race walking who are doing for a longer duration. If you see their body initially, so any athlete at the initial stages of when they are being active, their body uses up carbohydrates. After
Mm.
a particular point, your body also starts utilizing these fatty acids for its energy requirements. Because the fatty acids, while it has a particular amount in each person's body, um, the amount of energy you get from converting that is much higher.
The fat
Okay.
conversion energy.
The fat conversion. Yeah. So if you see 1 gram of carbohydrates gives you around 4 calories, whereas
Okay.
1 gram of fats give you around 9 calories.
Wow. Okay. More than
Okay.
double. Mm.
So, but more than double. So this is also something that impacts how when you're eating also. 1 gram of fat that you're eating, you're getting 9 calories, and 1 gram of carbohydrate, you're getting 4 calories, right? So whether when you're eating it in excess, it increases your calories, but when you're working out and your body requires energy, also the fat is giving you more energy to do the activity. So that is where when workouts are happening or when you're doing longer intensities of workout, your body will tap onto these fatty stores and utilize them. I think
Got it.
that is why there was a time where people used to do these fasted morning workouts because they were like, if your body doesn't have carbohydrates, then they can use the
Mm.
fats that's stored in the body.
Is that true?
Um, right now, what we see is carbohydrate is the limiting factor when it comes to performance. Okay, so if you're a high level athlete, I wouldn't recommend having fasted workouts. But for the general layman person, if you're otherwise healthy, it is okay. It's not that, if you don't have like a pre-workout or carbohydrate rich pre-workout, your body will automatically just start utilizing fats. It depends on how much amounts of carbohydrates are stored in the body also. Your body
Mm.
will first go to the stored carbohydrates and then only it will go to the fats. So it's not like, you have a fasted workout and all the fat gets used up.
Yeah. I think this is interesting, right? I've always been very curious about how the body utilizes the stored energy, the glycogen in the liver, then it goes
Mhm.
to uh, the muscles towards the end, and then the fats after that. So it's pretty fascinating the way it works. So Ansa, I think we're coming to a end of the session.
Okay.
I wanted to give one biggest myth about fats that people should stop believing. What is it? What would that be?
It's not just a myth, but it is also like a advertising gimmick that happens where you get sunflower oil and they say no cholesterol. Okay. Vegetarian or plant sources don't have cholesterol. So
Okay.
that advertisement gimmick is something that catches my mind every single time. But otherwise, another myth that usually happens is you shouldn't eat fats at all or fats are bad.
Mm.
That's like the most primary of the myths that is there. But that is not the case. Fats are actually very important for the body. It's just the amount of fats that you have to be watchful about. So there is no point. Recently, air fryers are all the rage in everybody's house. Everybody is buying that just to reduce the amount of fats, right? While using air fryers are absolutely fine, absolutely okay. It doesn't mean that you just completely cut down on the amount of fat that you're taking in. So fats are good, but in excess they are bad. So it's
Awesome.
not that all fats are bad.
Yeah, I think this makes sense. I think we've clearly established that fats are essential for your survival and reproduction. That's quite obvious. And we've also spoken about what fats are good for them and what percentage of that, ideally, according to your daily calorie
Mhm.
requirement, is needed. So that's 30% of roughly 2000 calories. So you need about maybe what 600, 700 of them coming from fats. Uh,
Calories. The 600,
Calories.
700 calories should come from the fat.
Yeah,
So let's say it would be somewhere around
60, 70
50
grams.
grams or 50, 60
Perfect.
grams of fat per person.
That's it. So we figured out that it's into nine as a factor which you mentioned. So that math is
Yes.
pretty easy, guys. Now you know how much of fat you should be having on a daily basis, and this should usually come from your fish and nuts and whole grains, is what she mentioned. It's pretty
And
clear.
also your oil also. So one
Oil.
thing before we end, this 50 grams of fat, right? There is invisible fats and visible fats, like I had mentioned earlier. Your visible fats are things like your oil, ghee, butter, and all. That
Right?
ideally you should limit to around 30 grams. And the rest, when you're even including cereals, pulses, and all, that also contributes to fats.
Mm.
That should be the remaining 20 grams. So whenever you're planning your
Okay.
diet, if you're already including a lot of red meat, lot of eggs, lot of fatty, like full cream milk, then the added oil has to be kind of limited. But in the 50 to 60 gram also, you have to kind of be watchful. Your added oil, use maybe like, let's say 1 to 2 teaspoons per dish that you have to make. But there is a hack that I can give you. So if you don't have any other cardio issues, a person can have about like 1 liter of oil or 1 liter of fats, that is including all the kinds of oil that you're using for a month. So that is something that you can probably try and keep. But if you have any cardio issues, then try to limit it to half a liter per
Per
month.
month,
Yeah.
per
So
person.
that's like 1 teaspoon per day, 1 tablespoon per day. Yeah.
Perfect. I think this is very interesting information. And so I think we've covered the basics, which even I was not aware of a lot of things, to be honest. And something that I wanted to learn too as I meander the, path of nutrition and good food. I think there's a lot more to cover. I'm sure you do more than what you just spoke about today. We need to speak about the athletes that you work with, what kind of body composition, metabolism that they have. I think we should also talk about a few metabolic diseases that can be reversed with, let's say, good exercise and
Definitely.
nutrition. Probably we'll do another session with Ansa pretty soon, maybe in a couple of weeks. I hope you people enjoyed the session. And if you do have any questions for Ansa, just drop a comment. And where can people reach you, Ansa, on Instagram or any social media, LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, I am active on LinkedIn. So you can search for Ansa Saju and you should be
I
able to
will
find me.
I will link your profile to the description, not a problem for
Sure.
people to find. Okay. Hope you people enjoyed the session. We'll see you soon with some other topic. Cheers. Thank you, Ansa.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
great
Bye
day.
bye.
Bye.
You too.